So the way that these calls are structured is that we just talk to whoever wants to talk, and we talk for as long as we want to talk about whatever it is we're talking about. And you're not taking anyone's time. You're not like, there is no worry that you need to hurry up and get your question answered. Everyone is going to learn from the conversations that we have. That is your responsibility on this exchange. As I or somebody else is engaging with somebody in a conversation, it's called a wisdom call because it is our role to interpret the wisdom as it makes sense for our lives. So apply the different learnings and teachings to the circumstances that you are going through. This is not a time for me to get on my soapbox and talk. This is a time for everyone to engage and to share. And there's a lot of life experience that I don't have. My belief is that you guys know just as much about this as I know, and probably more so in certain areas. So please share your wisdom. If something comes up and you have something to share or offer, do it. I want to try to get, so there is a hand raise thing. If you look down again, if you're on a computer, it's in the bottom bar. It looks like a little hand like this. You can tap that if you want to speak. But also, I encourage you to just unmute yourself and talk. If we get to a place where there's 10 people talking, then yeah, I'll chime in and figure out who's gonna speak. But please just unmute yourself and talk, and it'll work, I think, for especially a call this size. There's only 12 of us on here right now. I do see that Sophie had her hand up, so we'll start there and then we'll rock and roll as we go. Sophie, what you got?
Yeah. Yesterday I felt so because of the businesses that I've lost, and I didn't mourn and I didn't grieve, and it felt like miscarriages, like I did some kids and I never see them grow and I never see them enjoy the life, even though I had some progress in the past. My love is business, that's who I am, and definitely through my businesses I'm helping others. And yesterday I had the second time when I had a feeling. It was like some kind of poisonous heat that was on, and it appeared to me one time ago, but I couldn't manage that. And yesterday it just come up right up in the surface, and it felt like I was poisoned, and it felt like that thing was leaving me that strong. So yeah, right after I text in the notes that I'm feeling so vulnerable regarding this subject, it was like some kind of peace just fell over me. No, that stability which I didn't have at that moment, being in that situation. And after that, I managed my meeting and was everything all right. Hopefully today it looks to be okay. But yeah, this is a thing that I definitely want to talk about, and I had it in my mind for I think 1 week or so. I had it in my mind, and definitely this is the era in my life which I am fully engaged and I have my eyes set on.
Why do you think it happened yesterday?
It happened yesterday because I started to have some clear acts towards business again, as this is my natural drive, let's say. And so far, I couldn't feel the processes, and I didn't have the opportunity to go through some processes that were required in order for me to re-engage. Mm-hmm. And because of the setup that I'm in right now, I could do all the internal and external processes for that. And now I have some clear directions in the business, and that's why it happened. And the full moon, why not? I don't see one full moon, that's for sure. A vampire, maybe.
It sounds like maybe it just wasn't time yet to grieve. I have a very similar story with where I am currently with what I'm doing, and I think we have an awareness that knows. Or does anybody have anything that they want to share with Sophie in that realm, just like getting pulled back into business or grieving or letting go of something?
What was your story?
Yeah, for a very long time, when I shut down the last business, it was November of last year. And just like a little backstory there for you guys, like That business was doing like almost $100,000 a month in revenue, and I had 20 people working for me, and it was a pretty big thing that I had going on. And back in November is when I shut it down. I made the decision to shut it down in September, but it just takes some. I wanted to make sure my employees had time to figure out where to go and the membership and all of that kind of stuff. But even 6 months before that, I really stopped working in the business and just worked on it a few hours each week of stuff that it needed specifically me for. And what I did with that time is essentially went on a sabbatical and did nothing. And trust me, I am not the person to do nothing. Like it was not where I wanted to be. I was so deeply uncomfortable. And I had the same experience, Sophie, in that I knew that I needed to mourn that business because it was like my identity for 7 years. It's how I saw myself. It's how I defined everything. And yet I just couldn't, like, for whatever reason, I couldn't let it go. And similar to you, because I couldn't let it go, I didn't have any wisdom on what I wanted to be doing next either. It was like just a super uncomfortable place of like nothingness. It was brutal. But alas, we got to the other side.
I left my country, my native country, 2 years ago. And when I left, it was that was brutal because I lost my home, and the place, my nest is the place which I function. I don't have that. I need structure in my life, and because of my energies, I don't have structure within. I have structure like principles. I can have that, but it's not my natural. So I have to make it up in my life. And home, it's such an important thing for how I work and how I am. And I lost my home, and my businesses were falling apart. That happened exactly when I wanted to move to another country. And I changed countries. I tried to have a job. I didn't had anything for like several months, and I was applying like crazy, and was nobody to help me in that moment for some reason. And the family, I don't count, unfortunately. Everything was falling apart. But I need to mention something. When you do the right decision every single moment in your life, and you are considering all the variables, and you are so dear, you cannot miss. Life becomes so cohesive when you are in tune with that, and when you are in tune with yourself, and you're doing the right decisions. So I did that. I was mastering that, and yet something was off. Everything was glitching. Everything I touched just fell apart. Everything I touched, I couldn't do anything unless it was 6 or 5 people involved for them to change the vibe, and that lasted for so long. And I was, oh my God. And after everything that happened after that moment, it was just setting to have a business. Yeah, I wish to have a job and to manage my home. And I had the crisis, and I was so low, and I had to manage that. So it's only in this period of time when I do have the enough time and enough settlement in order to like mourn that, and I don't know, create the whatever it takes for that space to become clear again.
I think that oftentimes we think of the shadow frequencies and that we need to transmute them immediately in that moment. And I don't think that's always the case. I think sometimes they're there because we need to sit in them for an extended period of time in order to learn the thing that we need to learn to come out the other side. And it sounds like maybe that was the experience is, okay, I'm stuck in the shadow here for an extended period. And now finally we can begin to transmute and use that moving forward.
Yeah, links to prosperity. This is one skill and one perspective and one part. And okay, that can be done. But when you don't have enough food or shelter, that is the point. That's my point. I lost everything that I built. I couldn't access it, you can imagine. The thing about prosperity is that it doesn't come when you need it, it comes only when you want it. So fortunately, I did something a few months ago, and that was impacting me on the prosperity and abundance level. And now I feel all the oh my God, life can be different. So yeah, it's definitely a journey, but this is the stage right now. So any idea that it's regarding prosperity and manifesting and abundance? Not that I know, because I know a lot of shit, but I don't know. Sometimes it's good to have a talk about that.
Sure. Let me check in, Lindsay. I saw your hand go up and down. Did you have something that you wanted to say to Sophie? No? Okay.
Hi,
Got
Lindsay.
it.
I'd like to add to this line of conversation.
Please.
And forgive me because I am a little bit emotional like yourself. And I thought I had already gone through the grieving process, but apparently not completely because you're bringing more of it up. But we were building a health and wellness center. To make a long story short, the building got sold out from under us. And I had built my business up in a year and a half to making more money than I'd ever made 3 months in a row in my entire life. And I'm already 54, so that's a big statement to make. And now I'm sitting here with a couple servings of vegetables and one thing of meat in my fridge. So I know where you're at. I'm not fearful because I know it's coming, it's here. I know that's the case, but I feel you. I feel you. And yeah. So yesterday I have an idea to put a little, I do body work. So I had an idea to put a little shed on my property here. It's a tiny property. It's really small. But so I did an I Ching throw, a casting to connect with my gene keys. And guess what popped up? My life's work. My question was, if I were to do this and be here and get this shed and put it on my property, then that's what happens. So it's number 33 Revelation. If I hit this city, and if that's not a sign that I'm on the right track, and I'm right there with you because I'm digging so deep right now to hold the hope and deep diving into myself deeper than I ever have. And I'm a deep diver. Trust. I've been deep diving since I was a child, since a little girl. So I'm with you. I hear you 100%. I feel like I was meant to connect with you and listen to that story today. So thank you for sharing that. I'm proud of myself for not crying.
Yes, you are. That's an inspiration. How you hold everything together and being sure that you're on the right path when you are dealing with that. No, wow.
It's faith. It's faith. We got this. Let's go. We got this.
Yeah, oh my God. I admire you.
So interesting timing there. One thing I always like to bring up with the Pearl sequence and with prosperity is that it, like everything else in the gene keys, is a balance. And that balance is waiting for the right moment and the right resources to come your way, and walking that first pathway of the Pearl sequence, which is the pathway of initiative, which means how do we contribute to what Richard talks about is stealing fire from the gods. How do we go? Go ahead, Sophie.
That's my third time.
If you've never read the Greek myth of Prometheus, that's the Greek myth of Prometheus, is stealing fire from the gods. So check that out.
I wanted to ask you, Sophie, because this is just from this meeting and what you've been saying. I'm just listening to your words because actually I don't remember, unfortunately, what your business situation is. But from your words, I heard you are very aware that you need to process that trauma of losing those businesses, and that's completely valid. But there was a lot more mentioned in there, and I'm wondering if Jay was talking about the balance of your profile. I'm wondering if something else is holding you back from that prosperity, and maybe there's more work to do on resisting losing your home or having to leave your country. So I think that was the only thing that came to my mind. That Pearl, yes, it's great, and that's your passion, right? But if it's not happening, it's possible that it's not happening for a reason, and maybe there's just more to discover in the rest of your profile. That's what I was just wondering.
Sophie, did you hear that?
From the things you've said, I heard that there's more trauma to work on, and maybe the pearl is not happening as quickly as you want, even though you're passionate about it. It's not happening because there is more. You mentioned your businesses being really difficult to grieve. That's one thing, but there was other stuff there that needs to be grieved, like leaving your country, losing your home, etc.
You're right. It was karma. Actually, it was karma on a vibrational level from myself. I did everything with the profile. I did everything. And I was so frustrated because I was doing everything correctly. I could write 10 books over the Pearl Sequence book from the Jinkies. So everything was so clear, but there was something else. I don't know how to call that. I will call it the soul or higher self, like it works as a server and everything was stored there. For some reason, it was stored there, some kind of vibration when from one of my past lives, in which my kids weren't growing, in which I was betrayed in the most horrible way. And that vibration was like injustice and powerlessness, and was definitely something that I felt. So even though I was working everything on the Jinkies, especially how the Pearl sequence is explained in the book of the Pearl sequence, it didn't happen because of that. And when I removed that a few months ago, it just the thing started to move a little bit. And now I can feel it. And now even I feel that my vibe can be clear outside, like it was never before. And I thought that's how it's supposed to be. And yeah, definitely was karma, definitely. After I dislocate that, I didn't dislocate, I alchemized that. After that, it was really, I could see it and it was better. And now the businesses that weren't working, now I think they are doing on paper better than they were before. Not in the financial terms right now, not yet. But the people that got engaged and everything just moved. And wow, I did nothing this time and it happened because of that. What I did to the karma. So you're very right to say that.
On, I think what Lily is getting at, whether it's a past life or not, regardless, it's something that you're feeling. And so being sure that you don't skip over the grieving process, not just of the businesses. In my opinion, the bigger grieving process here is leaving home and like having to walk away from, even you just glazed over family, right? Like, I just don't have family, and just moved along from there. Like, those are big things that are in there. And regardless whether they're in there because it's karma that you feel is carrying over from a past life, or it's in there from something that happened this incarnation, that doesn't matter as much as it's in there and needs to be dealt with.
Okay. I'll take that in. See what I had there.
And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, and then we're going to shoot over to Corinne if you feel good, Sophie, but let me say
Yeah,
this, and
sure.
then I'll check in. Have you guys ever heard of Bashar before? Has anybody heard of Bashar? Yeah. Okay. Lots of yeses on that front. I'm not sure where again, disclosure, transparency. I'm not sure where I fall on Bashar, and I'm not sure whether it's something that's channeled or not, nor do I really care, because the stuff that he's saying is really powerful stuff. So I'm just going to take that for what it is. I am semi-esoteric averse, and I have a really hard time with astrology and a hard time with some of the more esoteric stuff, which I get is so weird because I'm teaching a system that's based on astrology, but nonetheless, that's the truth for me. It's probably some holding on from the last versions of myself. But Bashar has 5 steps, and this ties back to prosperity, that I think are really great for getting us back on the path of prosperity. So step 1, follow your highest passion every moment you can. And so what he talks about here is there being something that feels even just a little bit more exciting than something else. And that's the thing that we need to follow. And it doesn't need to be this big thing or related to our life's purpose or work. Like, it might be, do I want to go to a movie? Do I want to eat a meal? Or do I want to go for a walk? whichever one of those, because doing that thing is what's going to lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing along our path. So that's step one, follow your highest passion. 2, act on your highest passion to the best of your ability. So his belief, Bashar's belief, is that passion is a message from your higher self or your soul. But because your soul is in a different plane of being than we are, it can't talk to you. So it has to just come to you through desire or through emotion. However, its language, because again, it doesn't have physical words, is based around action. So the way that it knows that you're actually listening and hearing it is by acting on your highest passion to the best of your ability. So that's the second step. Step 3, have zero insistence on the outcome. This is a biggie. We all try and control what we're marching towards or what's going to happen when we engage in a certain thing. And oftentimes that blinds us to the much bigger thing that is trying to show up in our lives, but we refuse to see it because we're locked in on this one path that we think we're walking down. And then we miss that message from our higher self. Step 4, stay in a positive state no matter what. So this goes to the classic manifestation advice of your frequency dictates what you call into the world. So if you're in a place where you don't believe, if you're in a place of fear, then it's impossible to match to the frequency of something that you desire or something that you want in your life. And lastly, and this ties directly to let go of fear-based limiting beliefs. So the only way, and this is where I fall off on people like Bashar a little bit, is it's great to say these things, but how can I just let go of my limiting beliefs? It's what I've believed for the past 40 years of my life. And that is where I think a system like the Gene Keys comes in, because it gives us this step-by-step process of how to let go. And for somebody like me who is very left-brained, in the beginning, that is exactly what I needed. It ends up taking you to a very different place, but in the beginning, that was what I needed. Sophie, how you feeling? You feel good?
Yeah. I totally get that. Everything, that's for sure.
Okay. I want to, Corinne had her hand up, so we'll go there next. There you go.
You can hear me. Hi. Hi, I'm probably much more like basic than everybody else because I'm not deep in. So I just have some basic questions.
No need to qualify. You'd be
Okay,
surprised.
good.
I've got people that are a week into their Gene Keys and people that have been doing it 10 years longer than me and everyone in between. So you're at home here.
And I do, this maybe is coinciding with what's been talked about. I do want to talk about manifestation. Yeah, I don't get Bashar. I've tried. I'm not sure he's channeling anything. Okay. Anyway, so sometimes when, I watch your videos, but a lot of things on YouTube I listen to in the car. And so when you're talking about like the pearl sequence or the whatever, I'm like, which bubble is that? Which bubble on the thing is that? Because like I have one website that shows me everything, but it doesn't say the words like pearl. So I'm like, I don't know what this is. So anyway, having said that, I think you've said that one is supposed to start with the first top bubble. That I think that's life's work, and that's the activation sequence. But I just obviously looked around and seeing what's resonating. And so I have a question about two of them. The top one, life's work, and then, but first I'm going to talk to you about the very bottom one. I think you and I share this, which is, I'm getting out my mind, which is celebration, detachment, expectation.
42, yeah.
Yes. So I really resonate with this, but I wanted to get your perspective of how you resonate with it. Because for me, this has to do with my manifestation. The universe has shown me throughout the years, I am not allowed to expect. I have to detach from, oh, this might happen, that might happen. Let me do that. Like maybe it's a control mechanism within me, which is, okay, even here's my funny story, like going to my ex-husband's wedding. I was like, okay, either this will happen or that'll happen, or I'll cry or I'll be happy, and none of those things happened. And so it's constant So I really detach from having any kind of agenda. And that's what works best for me for manifestation. Like just, and I'm an actor, but I'm also an eBay seller. So I'll look in my eBay room and be like, oh, I forgot about that jacket. That's cool. That hasn't sold yet. The next day or the same day it sells, because I just let go of it. I have nothing on it. And so in certain areas, so I've come to this place in other areas of my life where I'm just detached from everything, like having a mate or not, whatever. Oh, I might get this job or I might not. Manifestation people talk about, oh, you got to really want it, you got to whatever. And that's just not the way it's worked for me. So yeah, so this one, detachment, expectation, like not having expectations. Like you said, like Bashar said, follow your passion, of course, and don't have expectation about where this is leading. And I do or have done that. And then celebration for me just means I don't celebrate enough. When I get something, I don't celebrate, I move on. So I wanted to get like a perspective from you on this one.
Yeah, totally.
Because also, one last thing, also, I think you have said, or I have learned, that one is not supposed to go in on one of these at like celebration. You're supposed to be looking at the bottom one, expectation, or how are you supposed to be living with this? Because my second question is about life's work, and my thing is psychosis. So how am I supposed to think of that?
Got it. Okay. Man, there's so many directions we could go with that. I'll crack it open, and then
Okay.
I can almost guarantee there's probably a lot of wisdom in this room of people that have experience and can share things here. So a couple of things, and this is going to be a long way back around to getting to 42, but to answer a couple of quick and easy ones. You said, I think I'm supposed to start with the life's work and work my way down through the activation sequence. And the traditional advice there is, yes, start at the beginning. And what Richard says is, if you're digging a well for water, it's easiest to dig where the water is closest to the surface. And that is the sphere of life's work. However, your intuition always knows best. And sometimes the pathways are not the right order for you. So I'd encourage you to to everyone, listen to your intuition and trust where you're supposed to be at this given moment. So that's the answer you there. Next piece of that is, I'm going to talk about the focus on shadow versus gift versus city. So what you said is that you saw somewhere that you should focus on the shadow. And that, I don't think, was me. My belief is that you should be focusing on the opposite. You should be focusing on the city.
Oh, so I'm supposed to be focusing on celebration?
Correct. And it's not so much as holding the energy, right?
Yes. And that makes sense to me.
This is the penultimate expression. The difference between expectation and celebration is just frequency. It is the same exact energy at expectation as it is in celebration. It's just, how are you interpreting that energy? And so if we hold the celebration, then I'm going to be more likely to align to that side of the energy versus being lost in the land of expectation, which is a useful teacher and ultimately something that we're trying to let go of so that we can learn detachment. Does that make sense?
A bit. Yeah, mostly.
For example, one of the things Richard says is you want to spend 90% of time contemplating your gift and your city, and only 10% of your time contemplating your shadow. And the reason for that is the shadow is going to be pretty clear to you already. You've spent the majority of your life in the shadow, what expectation looks like. Whereas it can be a little bit trickier for us to identify the detachment and the celebration in real time in our life.
Okay. I like that because again, I don't really celebrate. So looking for those little moments in each day And I've been gearing towards that, even though I wasn't sure that was right, of just any little moment in the day that's nice. It's like that kind of celebratory feel.
Totally. And at the city, for me, that 40-second gene key, the teaching there is that life is the celebration. Every single part of it. Like, it's the beauty of just, holy crap, we get to have this experience as a human.
Right.
Like, that is an incredible thing. And it ties intimately to the spirit of veneration, which is the programming partner here, the 32. And veneration is about like respect and trust in life. And so we see this spiral of life, and all we can do, because we have such a deep respect and love for it, is celebrate.
Okay. And then, so the psychosis one, I don't have to think about how I'm psychotic or how, so that's sanctity.
Right.
So what, do you have anything to tell me about sanctity?
Here, before we move
Well,
there,
I do.
yeah, Lily,
okay.
please.
So, Corinne, we have the same profile, but it's flipped. So I think what I'm understanding is that your 4232 is the life's work and evolution. Is that right?
The life's work is the 61.1.
Okay, cool. So we have the same. So mine is 62, but the programming partner of that is 62 and 61. So we have the same profile. Anyway, that's really cool. So I wanted to address the psychosis and just to add what Jay has said, because obviously I have gone through the same things that you now have to go through. And so my advice to you is, I did start with the shadow, okay, because I wanted to identify where it's present in my life. And so psychosis and intellect is my life's work, which are the shadows. And so that has been super, super interesting for me, because psychosis is it has such a bad connotation.
Yeah.
But if you read in the book, it's actually not that bad, and it is quite prevalent. That's basically just living in today's world as it is. That's just believing in capitalism, believing in everything that the science says. But we know that science is okay. So if you're not in psychosis, science is just the current fact, and facts constantly change. And that's what psychosis is. So if you are stuck in this, I've been told this, so this is true, that's psychosis. And if you step above it to inspiration, you know that, okay, this is a fact right now, but in the future we'll know more and it will not be a fact again. So that's what that is. But what I wanted to address for you is what you talked about, manifestation at the beginning of what you were saying.
Yeah.
So that fully resonated with me, because this time last year, literally August last year, I was writing my wishes and manifestations on a piece of paper and slipped it under my pillow just to get everything that I really wanted. And it's been a year, and I was thinking about whether these manifestations have come to life. And no, they haven't. Not exactly as I wrote them down. But that's because I've been writing those things out of my failure, out of my shadow, where I was feeling like, shit, I'm failing at this. But if I write it down and if I manifest it, then it will work. Because the other thing you need to remember is do the pairs, right? So radiance and purpose, okay? Think of them as expectation and failure. So I know it's a bit confusing, but
So radiance and purpose, where is that?
So your gene key 42 has a pair, and it's failure. So expectations pair is failure.
I don't know what the pair part is. I don't even know what that.
So you know how.
Yeah, there you go. Corinne, go to genekeys.com and click free profile.
Yeah, I've done that.
This is a pair.
Too. I don't have it. Okay. Oh, sorry.
This is a pair. This is a pair.
Okay.
So look at it like, for me, this is intellect psychosis, and this is expectation and failure. So I'm not just looking at expectation on its own. I'm looking at it as expectation and a failure. And so
Okay.
when it comes to manifestations, I was writing those manifestations from feeling failure, and they didn't come true because it wasn't true. It wasn't what I needed, actually. And it's been a year, and I have let go of wanting to manifest. I have let go of the feeling of having to write down what I want, and instead I'm just detaching from expectations.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that the universe has been actually giving me what I need, but it
Mhm.
is not what I expected. It's
Oh,
different
never.
people in my life. It's different things that keep happening to me. And what's funny, when they first present as a negative thing, so I had something really upsetting thing happen to me. And then I realized that I needed that upsetting thing to happen. That was exactly what I needed.
Mhm.
But that's not what I've expected, right? So that's so interesting when you talked about manifestation, is that for me, I had to let that go. In my
Yeah.
profile, that was something it was just not working for me, and I needed to detach. And that's when things started to happen for me.
Yeah, I feel like I said, I keep getting more and more refined in that. It's many years, but like there's things I can always knock on wood count on, which is, oh, I get income from eBay, or I find amazing things that are like, oh, I can sell that for thousands of dollars. That's easy. I always have a beautiful place to live that costs me hardly anything, but like relationships, no, not, and success in the way that I would want it, not really. Like, I'm an actor, I've done a lot of commercials, but it's not at any level that I want it to be yet. But yet I just keep further detaching and detaching. Is that not the road? And just feeling not ambivalent, but just, for lack of a better word, okay, let's figure out the new direction. Or is there a new direction? Or maybe the direction is just being at peace, and maybe it's veneration with just life. And that is something very important to me that I know is lacking, is just feeling like no ego, just letting life be like this, as opposed to you're outwardly successful, or you're feeling the hit of, oh my God, I did that and they picked me. And so whether I like it or not, detachment and having no expectation is good. It is the way. But it's with being a reseller, like I guess I have that down as far as the manifestation, but there's maybe some little locks within, saying, having a relationship or being successful in other ways, that maybe there's little bits that I don't, even though I feel very detached, that I don't have quite down and haven't figured out yet. And so they haven't manifested.
An expectation can be a very subtle thing.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
something to keep in mind, because as you're talking, if you go back and listen to this call again,
Okay.
for sure, once I
Yeah.
post it on YouTube, but there's an expectation that your technique of manifestation is what's going to work.
That's a good point.
And that in and of itself is an expectation.
Yes. I have to not care. Yeah, totally. Totally.
Exactly. And so expectation can be just the subtlest little string, but what it teaches us to do, ultimately, it's not detachment from something, some
Happening.
external circumstance, exactly, in the outside world. It's detachment from you. Remember, all of these
Yes.
things are internal.
And now we're going to go into psychosis, because I'm very like I've had dissociation for like many years now. And so that's when you're like, I'm not part of myself. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Wow. That's deep. Oh yeah. You're trying to pin it down. This is the way, but that's still the same. You're trying to pin it down.
And every universal truth, there are no words that our brain is trying to describe something, but to really get to truth, we have to let go of that. So I hear you trying to figure out why, like, why isn't this working? What can I do differently?
Yes, because I'm saying, okay, eBay works like this. I don't care. And then it's cha-ching, you sold this, or I don't think. And so I am trying to make that, okay, how do I do that here? What in this area how am I not doing it that way? There is an aspect of me that is always thinking, let me just be, like I said, be at peace with what is and just see what my next direction feels to go. But yeah, I am trying to pinpoint it like, oh, what am I not doing over here that makes it happen?
Totally.
And I think, again, I know I'm probably reiterating, but I do think part of it is going back to that celebration of this, oh, that was nice, that happened, as opposed to that's still not happening and there is such a freedom in not having expectations. It's so nice I'm going to go say to that interview and I don't know, instead of, because my brain will turn on and say they'll hire you or they won't, or they'll like you or they won't. And then I have to turn it off because I know that and so I do, but getting to that ultimate place, like you're saying, of no words, of just being is what I really want in life. Just be.
For sure. Sophie, I see your hand up. I'm going to come to you in 1 sec. I want to give Corinne 2 resources, which are just 2 videos that I already made that I think will be helpful for you.
Great.
So the first one, they're both going to be in the playlist called Pathways.
Okay.
And the first one is the Pathway of Challenge. And that goes pretty in depth on the idea that Lily was trying to get across with the programming partners and how those things are actually a field. They work together with each other and they piggyback one another, and they either spiral us up into the gift and city frequencies or they pin us down into the shadow frequencies. But it is one unified field of energy. So to give you an idea, for 3242, which is the programming partners, the pair. So we were just talking about 42. It's paired with 32. So expectation, which is 42, failure is 32. The only way that we can fail is if we have an expectation that we do not meet, right? That is a value judgment that we are putting on some external circumstance that happened in our lives. But if we can detach and zoom out from what's happening, then it's no longer seen as a failure because it just feeds us whatever the next step in our process is. So these are fields.
I definitely had to reassess my idea of what failure is. Like, oh, I'm a failure here. You did this. And it was failure and success.
Totally. So check out that video, Pathway of Challenge. And then the other one I want you to look at is the Pathway of Karma.
Okay.
And that goes into the workings of like the sphere of attraction. Like I also have one on the sphere of attraction itself, but that's like more the manifestation stuff, which really
I think I was just listening to that before this call, but perfect. I don't. Yeah.
So to quote what Lily said, the law of attraction and what's out there in the world, ultimately, I think 99% of it is there to sell you something, and it's there to sell you a system or a belief or something that makes somebody else money. Ultimately, manifestation and the law of attraction work not in what we want to happen, but what we need to happen for our soul to grow. And where the work is aligning yourself and your soul to that growth, as opposed to trying to change what you're calling in, because what you're calling in is perfect.
So, oh, wow. Oh my God. Oh my God. So basically it's really, oh, wow. I'm sorry. I'm going to cry.
Please. That means I did my job.
Don't be sorry.
Not at all.
So what you're saying is I got it on a level, but I think it's like what's coming in is correct, and not to be like over here with what you want, which I get that. But like what you have, which is, I have some hard things I deal with my kid. That's like your, not purpose, but just like that's your life. That's what's meant to be there that you need. That's going to grow you. That's going to be like whatever, as opposed to, okay, but let me be over here really working at this. Let's be with this and see where that's bringing me.
Exactly. And so when people who talk about manifestation talk about being in a positive state, the reason that we're in a positive state is so that we can work with the things that we are manifesting instead
The
of
things that
trying
are
to
there
find
now.
something else. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Sophie, what did you have?
Sorry.
No worries, Lily. We'll come to you after Sophie.
Yeah, everything that was just talked until now, it just answers some deeper questions which I had. I'm so grateful to you guys. And Corinne, there is something, given my experience with failure so far. Oh my God, I know maybe it's right, maybe it's a lot for you, and maybe what I'm about to say won't be of interest for you, but yeah, it's here, so I'm talking,
Yeah.
I'm speaking that. When it comes about failure, I think the most important part is important. It's not important. It's important. I don't know. It was a scene in Game of Thrones, if you saw it.
Yeah.
There is the Jon Snow, that's its name.
Yeah.
I only remember its face. And he had a battle, and he didn't achieve what he wanted. He wanted to save it all. But it was a scene when he said, "Oh no, mate, I failed," and somebody nearby him said, "You didn't. You just saved those people's lives. They have been dead if it weren't for you." So that's the thing about failure, which I always try to go back to that scene because it's so representative to what failure is. And of course we don't like it, and of course we have resistance to that, but that's the thing. And there was also what helps me regarding the expectations, what helps me deal with my own resistance, and not that it's about to happen that, but deal with my expectations and my own resistance, is that to create a difference between what I need and what I want. But the need, I set the standard so low that I will need only water and air and maybe some food. And if I do that, I'm not comfortable in that, no, at all. But I do it in my mind. And because I lower that thing, I have a feeling of, oh, of course I have what I need. And in this way, I enhance what Lily was saying. You have to do it from a vibration that you're already there somehow, not from the shadow. So not from need, but, oh, I would definitely want that. But if that won't happen, oh, I will manage because I have other stuff. Make that stuff be, I don't know, valid, real or not. It doesn't matter in this game. What matters is that you tune into that feeling. That's it.
Nice. Thank you.
Beautiful, Sophie. Lily, I'm going to go to you and then Lindsay from there. Oh, okay. Never mind. She just added it to the chat. Corinne, you got something in the chat from Lily. And
Yeah, I'm going to look.
Lindsay, please take us away.
Yeah, okay. I have to do a little celebration thing because I don't do it. It's not in my gene keys, but it's one of those universal things. Yesterday, oh gosh, and you guys that have been on here know that it's hard for me to speak, but got an opportunity to speak in a spiritualist church yesterday. And I've learned not to say no to these things because it's who I'm, according to my gene keys, that's who I am. And the lady that asked me to speak, she's been following me on Facebook for a couple of years. And she said, gosh, I've watched you grow and it's pretty exciting. And I want you to come and speak in church. And they had the best turnout they've had in a really long time. And it went as well as could be expected. It was pretty funny because I did take some years ago Toastmasters to learn how to speak, and I always cry. It's a thing. And so I wanted to write it and I wanted to time it. She said I had 20 minutes to speak. It turned out to be an hour, which to tell my story. I'm telling my story, which is what I wrote my book on, for those that haven't been here. And I wrote a book called Awakening Consciousness, which is my story of awakening, which is in my gene keys. So that's cool. And so it went over really well. And so I want to just do a little mention it, just a mention to celebrate because you're all here and I appreciate you. And I think
Thank you for sharing that with us. Everyone unmute yourself and let's give Lindsay a round of applause. Good job, girl.
Yay.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad it went well.
Yeah. And
Did anybody reach out to you after?
Yes, one of the girls asked for my book, which just arrived. It's not available on Amazon yet, but my copies came the day before my speech and she wanted to buy one. So she was the first one to actually purchase my book and I got to sign it for her. And it was pretty cool, which I wasn't going to do, but my best friend was there and she's, Lindsay, you have books. The girl wanted one. I'm like, oh, you have to go on Amazon. My friend says, look, you're trying to make a business here. And she's my Aries friend that's got the programming partners the same as me, only flip. And so she's like pushing me and I'm like, people are paying attention. What am I going to do? And so it was pretty entertaining. I wanted to talk about Gene Keys, and I was already over time.
Another time.
Yeah,
Lily said, please, when it is on Amazon, come here and throw the link in the chat and we can buy some copies, get you moving and leave some reviews. When you do that, we need to make sure we review her book, please. Pretty please.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's coming out the 19th
okay.
of August, and I'll mention that.
Cool. I think the next call we're going to do is going to be on the 15th. So we'll be just before, but then maybe the next one after that.
Yes. Yeah. So I just thought I'd try and do a little celebration. And I've been told that I need to look everyone in the eye and take it in and yet the other little thing that I wanted to talk about was that I just completed the pearl sequence and I had an expectation of wanting completion, saying, aha, I'm here and I'm not feeling it. So, and yet I had that experience yesterday. Yeah. So is that normal, Jay? So I got to the end. I've been in this study for a while, maybe 2 years, and I really pay attention to my pattern. And I've read most of the books. I bought all of them, and I've read all of them and underlined. Now I've changed to a different color. So I'm real serious about this whole thing. And patience is not easy because and I do feel some urgency. I'm 73. So trying to build a business. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting how it manifests and in what way everything appears. And I don't know how to be attached because, as I've said before, I don't know that I really want it because it's not, being an authority is not how I see myself. It's not what I've wanted, but that's my culture. Line 5. And in the city, there is valor through authority. So it's okay. I got to do it somehow.
And as I said, each time you've spoken in the past, I think that your speech affects people in ways that you don't quite realize on the leadership front. Before I answer your sort of, okay, I finished, now what question, I want to just check in and make sure, Corinne, do you feel good and everything that we talked about? Are you ready to move on? Do you have any other questions or anything pertaining to the stuff that you asked?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But what was when she just spoke about valor and like the leadership and the whatever, which gene key is that is that life's work or is it?
So she was talking about the sphere of culture.
The sphere of culture.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a 21.5 in case anybody else has that. It's
okay. Because I want to look at that.
My culture, the way I'm supposed to show up in the world.
Okay.
And it's supposed to surround me with people to work with And it did. This lady that runs the church, she's been following me, and she asked for an angel. She bought an angel message, and then she asked me to speak in her church, and she's asked me to come back and have lunch with her. It's been a couple years in the making, but that's maybe as long as I've been in the Gene Keys, a couple years.
Valerie, I want to go up to you.
Yeah, so my degree is in science. I'm a kinesiologist, and my concentration was in neuroscience. So I want to just speak to the expectation and the journey, and how Lindsay was saying, how you were saying you thought you were going to get to the end of this and have this, oh, I did it, I'm here, and this big reward. Just so you know, you're not crazy. This is how our body responds. And I've pieced this together just based on my knowledge, but this is what happens is we respond with dopamine. So dopamine hits us when we have an expectation, when we're moving toward that. So every step that you're taking as you're moving toward it, you get that little bit of dopamine and that little bit of dopamine. The dopamine doesn't hit when the expectation hits. So in my take on that is that it's about the journey. It's about the continuing journey. It's about the continuous learning. I hope to continue to learn until the day I die. If I'm on my deathbed and I'm still in that state of learning, then I feel like I'm going to be a happy person. And I feel like that maybe speaks to what you're talking about, is like you get to that point and you can let yourself we can be let down because we think, oh, I worked so hard and I got here. And then you're like, oh, because it's not what you're expecting. But just so you know, our bodies are literally wired to keep going. We are wired to keep learning and to keep growing. And if that helps, it's not us being crazy. It's literally what happens inside of our body. So that's, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Lindsay, what I heard is that you, over the past couple of years, have been striving for a logical understanding of your gene keys and of the system. That's why you're highlighting and underlining, and it's all up here. But in reality, what this wisdom stream is designed to do is to get us down here. And the next time that you go through, and I did the same thing, right? Like I've been through the golden path a handful of times, all the way through, like with pretty in-depth contemplations each time that I've gone. But each time I tried to take it in a layer deeper in one of my bodies. So physical body, then emotional body, then mental body, so on and so forth. And so that's what I'd encourage you to do, is to try to get to a place where you let the processing stop a little bit and get more into your feeling body this go around. That's the next step.
Yeah, thank you. That is what I teach, is I tell people, okay, then there's these places where we start over. and so I got to give myself that same advice. Start over again, do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just in a different way. I've said before, I still don't feel like my pearl is settled quite yet. Like I just my intuition says it's not quite finished, and so be it for now. And Valerie, I love that. I'm so glad that you said, I think most people think the dopamine comes when we get the reward, but in reality, it's the expectation that drives the dopamine, which is a crazy flip to think about. Sophie, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great speeches over here. There was something I wanted to add about. Thank you. It's just filling the room. Anyways, you're stuck with me right now. So I wanted to say about the authority you were talking about. The authority is something that I was so reluctant all my life, because I don't like bossy people, and I do not believe in the authority in this world. And yet it was quite yesterday I had to break through that, because authority also means the sovereignty, but not in a way sovereignty upon other people. No, it's how you conduct your life. And that sovereignty can be something how you manage yourself, how you manage aspects of yourself, how you manage aspects of yourself when those are not aligned with you. It was something exactly, you said something about the feminine authority, but it's feminine. I don't know. This is how I see it. And also it drives me with, it's empowering me, because when I think about that feeling of sovereignty, I feel like also I am the sovereign on my own creations, and I have to grow them. It's not that I expect them to be grown, but I am the source. And from that source, I have to take in some charge. And with that charge comes the healthy, I don't know, this kind of authority, which I pass it on. And what I pass on is, oh, I take care of people. Now there are people depending on me. Oh, I should take care of them. I'm not working for myself as a business owner. Now there are people, okay, we are doing that for them. So in this way, I am sovereign. I am a sovereign upon what I have to do, what has to be done, and upon what can be done and what can interfere. And being in that space of sovereignty, I also have the right resources to handle whatever it comes. And this is linked to tenacity, and this is linked to patience or trust, or whatever you want to, whatever flavor you want on that. Yeah, this is what I wanted to share. If there is the need for that. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Sophie.
you.
Lily, will you explain a little bit more about what you said in your comment for me? Because I think this is a valuable thing, Lindsay. What I think Lily's trying to get across, and I think is a valuable piece of the puzzle here, is you've got a certain definition of authority. And I think that
Sure.
Lily might be able to reframe that for you a little bit.
And actually, I really liked what you said, Sophie, because I think it's extremely true that authority. I think, Lindsay, when you think of authority, you must expect the authority that has existed before in this world. But as Sophie said, this is not the authority we should strive for. This is not the authority that is good for us. But there is authority that is really valuable. And I do think it comes from your own sovereignty and your ownership of yourself. I really liked what you said there, Sophie. And so I urge you, Lindsay, to maybe look into that a little bit more and redefine what authority is for you, because I think you are not aware of how much authority you already have. But like I said, it's a soft authority. It's not the masculine one. It's not the negative one. It is a feminine authority that is very valuable in this world. And you actually already have it. So I think you should reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. It reminds me that I'm speaking as the angels. They're the ones that I give the authority to. And yet my belief is in oneness, in my experience of awakening is being connected with all that is. And I think the angels are part of us in our own higher self, and in that I will eventually integrate more of that to be part of this life.
How would you define authority now? How do you view authority?
I suppose it's mostly like the misuse of authority, where people are overbearing and mean. And so I don't identify with that at all.
Right. And I think that comes from, like Lily said, we've been in a society for thousands of years now that is driven by the masculine, and that is very much do as I say or you're going to get in trouble, or do as I say or shit's going to fall apart, or you can't look out for yourself, so you better listen to me. And all of them are just driven by control and by fear. And I think we are flipping back into a place where we understand that true authority is the feminine, and the masculine is in service to that feminine. And so you potentially are a part of that shift in understanding that it's great to want to go out there and to do something, to try and change things. But the stuff that we're working with, that we're trying to change, that's got to come from somewhere. And the place that it comes from is the void, which is the feminine. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody else have anything they want to share with Lindsay? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And congratulations. I'm so pumped for you that you got that talk and that you sold your first book and signed it. And it's awesome. You're right there. I'm telling you, Lindsay, like, you have more of an impact than you think you have. And when you go back through the golden path and get more in touch with the feeling that's driving the thought that's happening, I think that's going to be a really big shift for you.
Yeah, thank you. The reason that the thing that I feel that I represent is that I'm wanting to give other people the courage to have a voice and to speak about their experiences, and that's why I'm doing it, and it's working. So yay.
And I'll tell you what's impactful for everyone that's on this call that has a fear of speaking, which I guarantee you are not the only one. There are plenty of people here. You just embodied for them what it's like to show up and to speak and to be heard and to have some authority even in that situation. And so that is impactful for people. People are going now to be more open and more willing to talk, just in this room of however many people are here, 13 people, 14 people.
Yeah, and I have 6 daughters, and so yeah, my ex says, you brought your own cheering squad with you. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I felt I needed the backup.
But now you can be your own backup too. And that's the next step, right? Falling into trust of yourself and of the world.
Yeah, that is. Thank you.
Of course. Chelsea.
Hi. Yeah, thanks first of all, Jay, for holding this space. And I also wanted to say, you just laid it out. Lindsay definitely had an impact on me. I've always had a fear of speaking in groups, even right now. And and a few of us spoke on like being an authority, and I've struggled with that, and just starting to push the boundaries for myself with that, with coming into like more leadership roles. And it's definitely uncomfortable. I find it's like this, like teeth grinding, uncomfortable pushing myself into these leadership roles. But Lindsay, I really appreciate you sharing your side of things. It's nice to just have a reflection of that kind of thing. And and then on another note, I wanted to ask about, Jay, you talked about Bashar and his just made a comment about how he doesn't really give a how-to. And I think we've talked about in this call a little bit about like how the Gene Keys does that with like these pathways and the programming partners. I'm wondering if I could get a little bit of insight from you about, so I have life's work of, Gene Key 30, and which is, the shadow of desire, gift of lightness, city of rapture. And then I think the programming partner is 29, which I think the shadow is half-heartedness, gift, commitment. But I guess so with the life's work, the Gene Key 30, I think it's been so challenging for me to start there. And I know you actually mentioned in this call that ideally, starting with life's work is easiest way to go. But I found that Gene Key 30 to be like so hard for me to approach or understand the I think as far as the shadow side of things go, I think so you've mentioned there's the reactive side or the repressive side. And I think a lot of, not even just with my life's work sphere, but there's just been, like, I look at the shadow side of all my spheres and I tend to lean towards the repressive side. And anyways, I guess I'm like looking for more of like the how-to with the gene key 30 and gene key 29 and understanding, yeah, that shadow, or like how much of it I really need to understand. Because I know you said we need to look towards 90% of our focus more on the gift or the city and then 10% on the shadow. But I guess I don't really understand the desire, probably because it is more in the repressive, nature.
Yeah. So even though 90% of the time is on the gift or the city, one of the first things that I work on with people is making sure that they understand the relationship between the shadow and the gift. Because in all of the gene keys, there's some sort of relationship between those two things. And it's important to understand that, because that then in your conscious day-to-day life gives you a choice of, do I want to engage with the shadow side of this energy, or do I want to take this in a different direction and engage more with the gift? So seeing the connection in this case between desire and lightness is an important piece of the puzzle. And so I don't think you're off in wanting a deeper understanding of how does desire relate in this case. I can tell you that, so I have 29 in the sphere of attraction. And so I've poked into these a fair amount, and desire is one that can be very tricky, and it's very sexual and sensual and emotional, and it's the way that it communicates with you. Like, I feel it most in like the animal part of my being and part of my body. And what really throws people for a loop is when you tell them that any desire that you have, it's never wrong, because it's put there by something outside of yourself that is greater than you. There's a reason that a desire is open in your heart. And people are like, what are you, how can that possibly be possible? If I'm in a committed relationship and I have a desire for another woman, what do you mean that's right? And the big piece of the puzzle here is, just because I have the desire doesn't mean that I have to act on that desire. And what that desire can do in that situation, if I'm in a relationship, is one of two things. Either, in both cases, I need to go to my partner and I need to tell them, like, hey, I'm having a desire for another woman. And in that case, one of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to talk through it and it was there to drive our relationship closer together, or the relationship is going to break apart and it was meant to break apart. In both cases, though, the desire was the step that brought me to the next point of action.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds, yeah, either like on either side of things, no matter what the situation, the desire or the shadow is like serving a purpose in that way to transform or give clarity to whatever the situation is. Yeah, I think, I guess in my situation, it's been, trying to figure out like how to allow space for the shadow to do what it needs to do. The desire is supposed to be like played out or addressed, or I don't know, I guess I haven't had a lot of like clarity around that part of it. But
can I ask you, what does lightness mean to you?
Oh my gosh, I love that that's the gift of this. I mean, lightness, gosh, it feels like freedom. It feels, and I get emotional, it feels like being a kid again. It feels like being connected to my truth versus being like stuck in this very rigid way of how I think I'm supposed to be. Yeah.
And can you see a connection between desire and lightness?
I don't really know a good way to describe this. Like this, like creature inside me that's always hungry, where it's okay, once I've gotten clarity on one thing, then just like moves on to the next thing, and it's never satiated. And yeah, it feels relentless, but there's like this temporary lightness with seeing the desire transform, seeing like what was supposed to come out of it. But
You're breaking up a little bit on my end, Chelsea. Or is she breaking up for other? Yeah. Okay. Give it just one sec, Chelsea, and let's see if it comes back.
Oh, am I cutting out?
There you go. Yeah, you're back now. You cut out for like maybe 20, 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was just saying, yeah, in terms of relating desire to lightness, I think it's, yeah, the lightness feels like just so temporary and doesn't feel like my baseline. It feels, this hungry, like never satisfied energy of desire is like more my baseline, and like feeling like stressed about having to figure it out. And I think we, briefly talked on Instagram about like having the core wound of repression. And I think, with that side of the repressive side of desire, I think it's just, hard for action or hard for desire to take its place with that. And I think with repression, it's been, I don't know, we talked about like how having this terrified energy. I don't know, I've got a lot of 5 in my profile, 5 energy. And so I'm always like in 1 energy. So I'm like researching and trying to dissect stuff a lot and have this like solution oriented mindset, fixer mentality. And so I'm like, okay, like how can I just like address this desire and fix it? And I think, oh, if I'm repressing it, then okay, let's like do it. But it's all in this like kind of chaotic, terrified energy. And we talked about like that energy is actually what the repression is versus coming into these shadows, whatever it might be, with a more actually open, gentler, softer energy. And I think it takes a kind of giving yourself space to feel that instead of like anxiously going into it, oh, I'm going to figure this out. But so that's a little bit of my struggle in that area.
Can I ask you a question around a belief?
Sure.
Do you believe that when you figure it out, quote unquote, that desire is going to go away?
Oh, I think there's a part of me that believes it'll move on to the next thing. So that's,
but when your awareness moves to the next thing, which it will, then what happens?
I guess then it seems like the cycle repeats.
Right. There's going to be another desire, and you're a human being and you have animal tendencies, not in a negative way, but like we're physical creatures and we have needs of food and water and shelter and love. And as a human, desire is part of the process and part of who we are and what we do. And so I think that for you, this is a seeing that the story that you're telling yourself about desire is that it's a negative thing.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to figure that out. Is it playing this role of the shadow then, if it's not a negative thing?
Mm-hmm. So the shadow isn't good or bad, and the city isn't good or bad. The shadow is what leads us to the city. Without the shadow, we could never get to the city.
Yeah.
So it's not the desire that is the issue here. It's how you're handling the desire.
yeah, I guess that's where my struggle with the how to, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm. And so we have a choice of, do I want to let this desire run my life,
Yeah.
or can I get to a place of lightness, a place of going back to your childhood? I think that's the key for you. That's where you got emotional. That is the magic sauce for you, is living your life in the innocence of a child.
Yeah.
And then at that point, we recognize that the desires are there, and that's okay. And they're actually, it's a good thing because it directs our next step, but we don't have to attach to them, right? We have this sense of lightness, this sense of the ability to just move through them and trust in them.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I tend to get, or I can get lost in, lost in letting these desires run my life, rule everything. And definitely have my moments of, I'm fluctuating like back and forth between the lightness and letting desire run the show. But yeah, like I mentioned before, I think like haven't had like lightness as like my baseline, which I would like to step more into.
I just want to make the clarity that stepping into that lightness does not mean ending desire.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. I think there's an issue of me trusting that the desire will play out its part. I think there's a struggle to step more into the lightness because I don't trust that the desire is going to be to play whatever role it needs to play in the situation. Yeah.
Totally. And that's activation sequence work. But I'm going to shut my mouth. Alicia has something that she wants to say.
Yeah.
Lightness for me, I feel like started happening when I was able to see what kinds of my people pleaser ways of being in the world were like, if I have this perception in my mind that I'm doing this thing to gain someone else's approval, or if the desire comes from something that isn't just like my core desire and it's coming from like outside influences, of if I had this thing, or if I had this job, or if I had any level of it could make, say, my parent proud of me or something like that, then I feel like that really darkens the whole thing. That's what like makes desire have a dark side to it. Like that. Are you doing it for yourself, or is there some outer influence that's pushing you? Is it the greater society saying, I need to be this level of successful in order to like really love and validate myself and feel like I'm right in the world or something. Like I think, and I think I bring that. I started doing some like internal family systems and working with my inner child, and working with my inner child made me realize that like I just want to create art. Like that's what I desire to do with my life, and if anybody else has a problem with, that's their baggage, that's not mine. And so I think it's like really figuring out what your inner child really wants for you and what's going to make your inner child happy. And um you need to be the loving parent for that child that may have been abandoned so many years ago by someone or something that told them that what they wanted to do in this world wasn't right.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, there's definitely pieces of that for me as well. Yeah, pretty varied subconscious stuff with most people's inner child work, but definitely have, I think, some stuff buried in terms of, yeah, trying to, I think, make myself somebody, a desire to be somebody in the world because of the beliefs of my family. Yeah. So I definitely resonate with that. I think there's, yeah, stuff to work on there.
Totally. It's a big area to work on.
Yeah.
It's working.
Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Valerie.
Yeah, so I have a question, Jay, when you were describing the connection between for me, it would be forgetting and then into mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
So are we looking at that shadow and saying, okay, so what we're trying to do with that shadow is, with that connection, is to maybe pull the strength out of it? And I think Alicia almost answered that question for me, is because she has that desire. And so she's living with her internal desire. And is that kind of, because I just purchased the books, by the way, the activation secret, because I didn't have it last time. So it's on its way. But is that like to bring that shadow to light and to utilize it as a strength moving forward in life? Is that the purpose of our, to link it all together? So for me, it's forgetting, mindfulness, and revelation. Okay. I feel like I sit in my mindfulness often, but that's mostly because of 30 plus years of practice. You get a little bit good at things. But yeah, I try not to connect with the forgetting much anymore. So thank you. Thank you, Chelsea and Alicia. Thank you. Because yeah, I see things differently in this exact moment. So thanks.
Perfect. I'm glad. Yeah. And that's a big thing with the gene keys. Everybody wants to do away with the shadow, but it's not. The shadow is the gift. It's the same exact thing. It's just, how are you seeing that thing? It's not the thing itself. The energy is no different. And what I like to say to people when I'm talking to them, and this can maybe make a light bulb go off, maybe for you, Chelsea, or maybe anybody that's struggling with this idea, is the energy of nervousness and the energy of excitement are the exact same energy. However, we choose to identify with one or the other. And either we get nervous and we get tied around this energy that's flowing through us, or we get open and we allow it to just flow through us. And that's the difference between the shadow and the gift. Does that make sense? Chelsea, going back to just one other idea with desire that might be helpful, and you may have already seen this, at least I think this is out of the desire. I want to say it's out of the audio, but it might even be in the book, is the idea of desire being like lights along our path. Are you familiar with that idea?
No, I'm not. I'm like still on the surface of
Okay.
things. Yeah.
So basically, this is an idea Richard describes where our life is the path and we're walking down the road, and each desire, and the road is dark. We can't see what's happening. But each desire that comes to us gives us the ability to throw a light just a couple of steps ahead of us. And so at that point, we know, okay, this is the direction that I'm meant to head. Like we talked about with Bashar earlier, right? What is the thing that brings you the most excitement?
Mm-hmm.
And so each desire that you have is just a light. We all want to see the end, right? We want to see where we're going, but our desires are the stones or the lights that allow us to keep walking down that path.
Okay. And like he was speaking on that for like specifically to the shadow of desire, or just like a shadow in general?
Specifically out of the 30.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I have to, get a little deeper into that. But yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Again, it's just a reframe around desire. I think that's the work for you around desire. Isn't I need to stop desire or that I need more desire. It's just, how do I think about desire?
Yeah. I noticed that that's been a lot of my work, like just a lot of reframing and understanding, how my mind like has been working and what's serving me and what's not in terms of mental processing and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and oftentimes we just don't even question or think about it, and then that's
Right.
pattern, and then that's how we live or run our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it becomes, yeah, like you said, you don't think about it. So then it's not something you question. And it's, yeah, how can you have any clarity on it if you're not questioning it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the one last idea that I'll leave you with on desire is that sometimes, and I hate to say this because it's hard to hear, but it's the truth. Sometimes desires are put in our heart by God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, so that we don't get those desires. Because it's in not getting that desire that teaches us the lesson that we need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see how that'll be, because I think I've noticed that, yeah, with other things that I like, where I thought I was like allowing the desire to do what it needed to do to take the action it needed to take and open myself up to whatever was going to happen. And then it just showed me that it like provided me with a lesson that I didn't expect. And yeah, it showed me that like the desire wasn't actually meant to be what I thought it was supposed to be, or meant to like there's like a lot of like fear around a lot of my desires, and when I let them play out, it's not, or at least in my experience so far, these fears haven't actually been the reality. It hasn't been the lesson that I thought the universe was trying to teach me. It was something else transformed along the way. Yeah.
Exactly. The desire is just to get you to take a step towards something. What you'll find oftentimes is the moment you take that first step, the desire shifts.
I think I'm just like on the like fringe of that, trying to like, yeah, but I definitely resonate with that for sure.
And on the flip side of what I said too, like Alicia was talking about, like you have a desire to do something in order to satisfy somebody else. Sometimes you have the desire, you accomplish the thing, and you realize that brought me nothing.
Yeah.
And that's another very valuable lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely done that with academic work and jobs, and like thinking that it could mean something for my family, and but yeah, doesn't really end up like filling my own void, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. Which ultimately takes you away from your higher self, which even though in that moment you think you did something for your family, and you did, there's a real outcome there, but at what cost?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, even with those experiences though, I don't regret them. I feel like I got something out of them, each of these, even if they like weren't necessarily like leading me more in alignment with my higher self. I think, yeah, there were still other gifts or lessons that were there just to direct me back to myself.
Each step we take that's farther from our higher self is wisdom in knowing that this is farther from my higher self, right? That's not the direction.
Yeah, definitely.
And so no regrets ever, because we're always either we're getting closer to the path or we're getting farther from the path, and we're learning that we're getting further from the path.
Yes, absolutely.
Alicia, is your hand up for something with Chelsea or something, our next topic?
It's piggybacking off of this conversation.
Okay, please go for it.
I think from what I shared last time we had one of these calls, I've been thinking about my dad's like life's purpose and just have been curious about it. And so I ended up digging and finding which gene key that is for him. And it's the same as my SQ. And I've been thinking about the shadow of interference in gene key 44 And mine, I don't know what his would be, but mine is a line 4, which is belonging, kinship, and community. And so I've been trying to think about interference in this. I guess I couldn't really interference just felt like frustrating and infuriating to me because it felt like a negative thing that I can't get past with him. But since we've been talking about seeing the positive side of interference, I'm like trying to think about what it means to see that in a positive light, and how that can end up leading me to my gift. And it's just this. I've also, I think, been seeing the shadows in a more negative way than trying to look at them and how they can give a lesson or be a positive thing. So,
How would you define interference?
interference for me is some kind of distance between us. I don't even exactly understand what SQ is, but it feels like there's an interference in the field somewhere of our ancestry, like something so deep and hard to see or look at that it's like this hidden way of not being able to connect with each other. So I'm just curious. I don't know. I'm throwing my whole life up in the air right now and being like, am I going to go take care of my dad and work on my dreams at the same time? And am I going to try to become a stronger person, like while interacting with my dad?
Let me ask you this. You said you see interference as like something that causes you to not be able to connect. What do you think that something is? And you can broaden it out. Try not to think so much, however your brain wants to handle it. But I'm not necessarily talking about your specific situation with your dad as much about just in general.
It's probably this general sense of maybe not speaking my truth, not speaking what feels, or like having spoken my truth so much, like trying to do it and have it just be completely disregarded. And I think that's that's the like trouble with like narcissism or just emotionally immature folks, is how they don't really see outside of themselves. So it's hard to have my own identity around my dad. And I think maybe that's part of the interference. And maybe that's okay, maybe that's pushing me to more strongly defend and stand up for myself. Maybe that's the lesson.
What? Okay, so you said it's not speaking my truth or speaking your truth, but others not being able or willing to hear it. Is that true?
There's maybe some fear there of not being heard or listened to. I think I was trained by my dad not to expect to not get my needs met, even when I spoke them.
So at a base level, and you already said it, what underlies not speaking your truth or people not hearing your truth because of something that they're dealing with?
Can you rephrase that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all. What stops you from speaking your truth and at the same time stops people from being able to hear what is actually being said?
It probably all goes back to my life's work, which is grace and graciousness.
For me, and you already mentioned this, it's a frequency of fear.
Yeah.
Right? It's this, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be heard, or if it's the person that's hearing, I'm afraid of what this person is saying to me and what it means for me in my life. So the interference frequency, as I see it, is the frequency of fear.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that distorts everything that we see and do and say if we're not aware of it.
It's coloring the whole situation.
Exactly. So I want to say in that key, and it might not be, it might actually be one of the keys, shadow is corruption, and it might be in there. But this idea that our base operating system on this planet is this frequency of interference. And it's this corruption. It's like we're misinterpreting the code that is being presented to us. Like when I say corruption, not like greed corruption, but like corruption in a file on a computer. Like we just can't read what's actually there. And it's because of this frequency of interference.
That's all in this gene key. When I've listened to it and contemplated, it talks about there being like a corrupt file in the system, that like a virus or something that I think almost needs to be recognized and deleted so that the whole system can function.
Exactly. You got it. So 44 is a very collective gene key, very collective. It has a lot to do with all of us and how we interact with one another. And the lesson there is that we aren't in teamwork, at least as far as I see it or understand it. And maybe this will help you make the connection. We aren't in teamwork because of that interference frequency, because of that fear. I'm worried about protecting myself instead of working with you to accomplish some common goal. And it's the case of society forever, right? Okay, we're going to have this treaty and I'm going to be a partner with you, but there's all of these rules and all of these systems and all of these boxes that need to be checked in order for that thing to happen. And instead of just trusting and knowing that we're going to be safe.
I think we're coming from I just had something come up for me because my partner was telling me about how up the street from where he lives, there's a beach called Point No Point. And that's where like the Washington state like treaties were like signed and with the tribes. But what they signed, they didn't know what they were signing because they didn't even speak the same language. And so there's this like deep deception that goes so far back that we're all trying to get past all the fear and I don't know. I think we're coming into a new time. It seems like there's a lot more collectively that's being talked about.
Yeah.
It came in my mind.
No, I agree. That's the name of the game. And if we go to the synarchy, like that is the belief that there is a principle out there that is organizing everything in the universe so that we can come together as a team and have the best possible outcome. And when I say a team, Gaia, right? All the plants, all the animals, all the people, everything that's on this planet. And the goal is to trust that there is an organizing principle out there that brings us all together to serve the highest good. And interference is an inability to trust in that frequency.
Yeah. It's interesting. Anyways,
Valerie, sorry, Alicia, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm really glad to talk about the shadows in the way of trying to see maybe the lessons we get from them.
Because it's the interference that like when we see the interference, then we're willing to engage. Oh, I haven't been seeing this it's actually there. And that's what allows us to fall into teamwork and into trust. It's, I see this interference and now I can respond differently.
Yeah.
Valerie, please.
Yeah, so to add to that, I also have a 44.4, but mine is in my purpose. So I feel that. I feel what Jay is saying as far as how the fear can keep us. It interferes with our progress, our opening, our ability to reach that next level of teamwork. And I just think it's funny because I got this little mug that I've been holding here and it says teamwork makes the dream work. And I've had this for 5 years. So this whole thing for me is full of synchronicity today. It's amazing. But I also wanted to add to it the purpose or the piece of this is what he was saying about that this is part of the collective. This is really this key. And as far as you're talking, the corruption, you had mentioned that, and that's in my prosperity, my pearl sequence. It's 50. So it's harmony. It goes from corruption to equilibrium to harmony. And together, the 44 and the 50 make the codon ring of Illuminati. So just to like, because Jay, you had mentioned something about corruption, and I think that's the connection there between those two. And so and I can see that, how that connects, and being able to release that fear, release that interference, and at the same time, how that interference and corruption go hand in hand, like they really do. And so, yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. And Alicia, I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
Yeah, I went back and watched the video because I had to leave last time. I couldn't stay for the whole call. And I got nothing but love for you. I'm so proud of you. Yeah. You touch what you're going through, and what you're sharing is touching me and my relationship with my father too. Just thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thank-
Yeah, these conversations, you guys don't know this, but I have people that reach out to me directly, not on comments on YouTube, about these conversations and the impact that they're having in people's lives. So all of you that have had the courage to talk and share, and those of you that are just here and holding space, I don't think any of us quite realize what we're up to here and the level of impact that it's having. It's a big deal. And I was thinking today actually about, as I'm trying to figure out what the hell is happening here and what I'm doing and what's forming itself and building, like I'm smart enough to know that I don't know a lot. And I think that part of this is like this 44th gene key, this synarchy is going to start to show itself in this group of people. Like we all have such different strengths and abilities and capacities. And I think there's something beautiful that's going to show up. I have no idea what it is, but I'm certainly open to seeing where it goes. That's for sure.
I don't think it's showing up, Jay. I think it's already here.
Agreed. Yeah.
I have to see that.
Chelsea, I want to circle back to you and just make sure, is there anything else that came up for you? We dipped away from you and went over to Alicia, which no biggie, Alicia. I just want to make sure that we close that loop.
Yeah, no, I think we left on a good spot. My takeaway is just, I think this time has just affirmed what I've been like thinking about myself and my own journey, just about the reframing. That's like my big takeaway, and about like the role of desire. And yeah, I think that, it's nice to like, be in a space like this where I can, see that's, I don't know, just, that reframing is like not just a thing that I'm hoping is the way to the other side, the way to lightness. It's something that is you can apply to all of the gene keys, and sounds like all of us are doing it in our own way. And that's been nice to be in a group that affirms that for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm glad it was helpful, and it'll take time. All of these things take time. Just open mind, stay with it, and trust that it's giving you what you need always.
Yeah, that's true.
Mentioned it briefly, but that's what the activation sequence is all about. It's about coming into a place of trust. And I know that this is a key that you have in your activation sequence. And so that's going to be a big piece of the puzzle for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you mentioned earlier that you don't dip your toe in too much of the other esoteric stuff, but this kind of is aligns. I look at a little bit of everything, the human design, astrology but like in astrology, a lot of you probably know about the North Node and South Node, and like the South Node being like representative of your past lives or early life and this life, and how you can like embody like more of that energy a little bit easier. And North Node being like like where you're headed and like an energy that you like maybe need to work a little bit harder to embody. And anyways, for me, it's South Node in Virgo and North Node in Pisces. And Virgo is very analytical and very about the details and this kind of energy. But Pisces is more like spiritual, compassionate. And so like this north-south node journey in astrology is also about, for me anyways, like trusting, letting go. And so it's just funny seeing it showing up in, yeah, not only the gene keys, but astrology and probably a lot of other things too. Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think that's the heart of every single esoteric teaching that's out there. They all get to the same place.
Yeah, that's true.
The path of meditation leads to the path of yoga, and the path of yoga leads to the path of meditation. They all take us home.
Mhm.
Okay, Alicia, coming back to you. Corinne, I see you. I just want to finish up with Alicia, and then we'll circle back from
I wanted
there.
to say something to Alicia.
Oh, please.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I don't know what's going to come out, but I understand a bit of what you're going through. And I've dealt with a lot of dad issues, and he's deceased now. And I recently had an energy healing where I was just bawling my eyes out about my dad, and I didn't even, it came from out of nowhere. But in the past, I had thought I did the best I could with my dad. I tried, but in this energy healing, I really had to forgive myself because I realized I was holding some, I wish I had done better. Because sometimes when we go through our childhood or whatever, it's like we only have the capacity for what we have to help in any way or to be aligned with your dad. And I couldn't, like in my early 15, 13, he was an alcoholic. So I just broke off from having a close relationship. And so as we got older, like I look back and, oh gosh, I wish I could have been able to drop all that stuff that happened, but I just wasn't there. I wasn't able to do that because of was just always the elephant in the room of things he had done or whatever. But at his core, he was a good guy. And I don't have any input as to, oh, helping or not helping. But with a deceased father and me in my 50s, I do feel like I wish I could have done better. And that doesn't mean you have to do whatever. But, and also I just want to say, I thought it was really cool that you pulled up his gene keys, I guess you said, because like recently I pulled up like my dad and my mom's astrology and human design. And I want to know this. And it was like, wow, okay. My mother has all these planets in Gemini and fire sign. It was just like a lot. I'm like, it explained. And it also gave me affinity. And it's also that allowance of, oh, this is them. And we're all just ourselves and getting by and trying and have our idiosyncrasies and our really bad points. My parents had some good bad points. And it's just like when you imagine yourself as it doesn't have to be age, but if you're like much older, you're just going to keep I'm just going to keep getting to this place of like love and peace. And how can I help humankind? How can I help my siblings, my mother, father, and all the other fucking baggage is going to go because you just feel like you're going to be all love. And yeah, when you're younger, like you can't be that because you just have the chip on your shoulder or they did that, or like, I can't love them because they're mean to me or whatever. But when you get, so putting yourself in that position of overseeing, oh, I'm just going to be love here. And I think I'm going to go back. That's probably a message for myself with what I need to do with my child is, yeah, just the allowance and the unconditional love, or just love, and trying to understand that that's their journey or these are their struggles and how can I best live in that and be my best, or how can that grow me? That was just a
Yeah.
whole bunch of whatever. I don't know if that was helpful.
I think we're all here to teach each other something. So to look at, I don't know. It's interesting because if anybody has the Pattern app, like I'm on there and I got my sister on there, and my sister, it doesn't know that this is my sister, but it says we have some karmic link. And then, so it's just interesting to see the areas where we were both similarly shaped by my dad, and to think about I just see these different cycles of like wounding. I'm always talking with all my family members pretty separately, but I'm seeing all these little connections between all of us of like how we were all specifically wounded by different parts of my dad or my mom or the divorce or whatever. And so it's all these little intricate inner workings of like how we all come together to maybe help our parents to find some kind of resolution within themselves too before they're gone. Also the lessons that their wounds that were here to teach us something about ourselves and what we were supposed to heal in the collective conscious and not pass along to children down the line.
Yeah, and then having this and siblings too, because I've had to explain to one of my brothers, like my relationship as the baby, like the youngest, is going to be different than yours as a middle child. My other brother is and so they might have an upset with me because of how I'm reacting. And then I let them know this is what happened to me in my childhood. This is what my mother said to me. And that's why I'm reacting in this way. Oh, wow. She said that. Yes, that's an experience I had with my mother that you did not have. So there's that kind of bonding too. I think that's important. And again, it's just allowing people to be who they are instead of judging. I'm just very big on that. I'm very big on you have no clue what that person's going through. So don't judge that they did that action. So that means they're messed up because you don't know. My brother can perceive that me not taking care of or visiting my dad enough when he was in hospice means I'm a cold-hearted something. And it's no, actually I'm at home crying. Like I can't do it or whatever. So we just never know. But anyway.
It's so individualized for each person in a family system. If you get all into it, there's the different roles that your family will put you into. And I think I partially put myself into the black sheep role for years because I needed to forge my own path. But I think I went on my own path for so long that I really distanced myself from my family. It's interesting to see patterns of it. Like my parents had 3 children, and each of them come from like a family with 3 siblings. And the eldest on each side of my family, like my aunt, who's the eldest, lives up here in Washington State, far away from her parents. And then my dad's brother, who was the eldest, he also moved far away. So it's interesting to just see the patterns repeating themselves and being like, is this the pattern of my family? Am I in that exact same pattern, that same loop with everybody else? It's all really fascinating.
Yeah, I have the same thing. They all moved. There was one other thing I was going to say, and the black sheep. I said to my brother the other day that growing up, I thought of him as the black sheep, and now I'm realizing it's actually me. I'm like or that it changed, and it's me because I'm not. It's funny. Or maybe it was always me. Yeah, family dynamics are weird.
I like to call myself the purple sheep.
So I had a question. I don't know if you guys feel okay with me moving it along, but with the activation sequence, I know some of us might be past it, some people won't be, but I feel like I've done a lot of work between the life's work and evolution. And I'm wondering, with the next 2 that are just part of who you are, is the challenge, working through the challenge, supposed to help you just to live more in the gifts of the ones that are like lower down, the radiance and the purpose? Is the work you do above the surface supposed to just bring the stuff out from underneath? Because it doesn't feel like with my radiance or my purpose that I tend to even be in that shadow side very often. It seems like my biggest struggle was actually the above the surface stuff. I'm pretty stable underneath it, but I'm just curious, what is there work to be done down below on the radiance and the purpose, or is that do you start to move on if you feel solid there?
Again, I'd always default to you knowing the answer to that question, which sounds like you feel solid there, and it's okay to move to the Venus sequence. One thing that I just want to answer your initial question, yes, that's how I generally talk about it, is by focusing on the spheres on either end of the pathway of challenge. So that's your life's work and your evolution. You are going to affect the unconscious spheres of radiance and purpose. At the same time, remember that the profile, although it's laid out in the golden path and this pretty, like, I go from this and then to this and then to this and then to this in the world, it's not how it actually works. This is a hologenetic wisdom, which means that they are all contained in each of the others. And it's like the analogy that I use here is like when I used to own the gym, somebody would come and be like a woman would come and be like, how can I lose this fat here underneath the bottom part of my arm? And I always had to tell them that, like, spot reduction isn't a thing. I can't make the fat disappear here without it also getting lower everywhere else over your whole body. And so that's how maybe to think about the gene keys in that way, where one sphere affects all of the other spheres and they play together.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's why I keep jumping around, like other things keep lighting up for me before this stuff. It feels like I feel solid here now, but like other people have said, they go back to the activation sequence and they go through it again because there's probably something that they weren't maybe ready to see or look at yet, or something new is coming up for them. Something else in their gene keys is like brought something to the surface for them that brings them back to the beginning all over again. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, there's layers to this work and it gets deeper and deeper. So although it feels settled and solid now, there might be a moment where you have this aha, what Richard calls a pivot, and that then could bring you back down to your radiance or your purpose, because all of a sudden you see it in a new light and you're like, oh man, I didn't have this as settled as I thought I did originally.
And Alicia, I'd like to add that I feel the same. I feel the same as you do. Like, I very much, when I pulled up, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months ago now, my gene keys, my radiance and purpose, I felt like that in the depths of who I am. Like, I feel like that sits inside of me on a regular basis. So I hear you with that. And to add to it, I hope Lily watches this later, but to add to it, the connection that she made about the pairing between the two, I'm looking at, oh my God, addiction, interference, invention, teamwork, silence, synarchy. Wow. And I hadn't even thought of it like that. So now I get to go back and go in even deeper now into what I already felt was at my soul. So it's almost like that creates an anchor. I feel like it almost like it creates a space where I can feel comfortable, if that makes sense. Where if
some similar things. Yeah.
Right?
I'm like, you're saying all the words that I have in mind.
Awesome. But yeah, so I hear you 100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's cool. So thank you.
Is there anything else there, Alicia?
I don't know. Did you say we just came into what would be gene key 7?
Yep.
Is the pairing partner 8? I know that a lot of them are like 1, 2. Do you know what the pairing partner is for 7?
I don't off the top of my mind, the top of my brain know what it is.
I remember now. It is.
It is?
It's the part. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I'm not a pro. It just happened.
It's just what we can all remember from. It's a lot to listen to. What is it, like 45 hours of audiobook if you're going to listen to the whole thing?
Mm.
But yeah, I started bringing up my attraction sphere because I felt very interested in it. I spent the weekend with my partner and we were working through some of our. I think we both have like big trust issues from like just reliving the same traumas over and over in cycles through like past relationships. And we are both very in alignment with each other and like the life path that we're on. We're both going in the same direction, which is interesting. It's very karmic. And I find myself constantly being like, is it time to end this? I think there's this part of me that like wants to know. I think I got to a point with relationships where after a year or even less than a year, I would be like, I would make a quick judgment about it and be like, is this really going to work the way that I want it to? And I would just sever it and cut it off and forget about it and move on. And so to be in a relationship that's been going on for 4 years now, which is actually honestly my longest relationship, I don't question myself as much as I used to. I think a lot of the healing work that I've done has really helped me, but I was trying to think about my attraction sphere next, like on the golden pathway, but it also just naturally came up for me. And the my attraction sphere is 8, so I'm curious if it's coming up also because of the programming partner right now, which I should probably go look at just for the sake of knowing what the universe is trying to communicate to me. But
I actually want to say, I think the programming partner is 13, if I remember that correctly. Did somebody have it is?
It
Okay,
is. I
yeah.
got the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 7 and 13.
And to answer your question, Alicia, too, the programming partners are laid out exactly opposite of one another on the wheel. And so what that means, that wheel is what's turning, and that's how we figure out what the gene key of the week is. That's how it's whirling through space. And 13 is going to come up 6 months from now, right? They're exactly opposite of one another as we're turning through.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that 7 numerically is before 8. Maybe that's why, dude, we have no way of knowing what, like, why.
Totally.
We like
Why
to
something
pretend.
might-
We like to pretend like we understand the connection that's happening, but we don't. Like, we just got to roll with
Well,
it.
Yeah, you can get lessons from any combination of 2 gene keys. It's not like the pairing partner is the one and only,
For sure.
but it's interesting. I don't know. It's a really cool practice. And I think I have been realizing my privilege in the fact that I have the time and spaciousness to be able to slow down and turn inward, because a lot of people that I would want to tell about the gene keys wouldn't have the time or energy to even go into it. And I think when we are on a quest for knowledge and knowing ourselves more deeply, like, we can make the time and space for it. But it's just interesting. I think it's really nice to have this community for the fact that we can all go deep together and that we're all in that same way of being, because it's hard to get that with people in your everyday life.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Anyways,
There's this weird thing that happens, this weird shift that the more we slow down, the more time we seem to have. And I'm not exactly sure why that's the case, but I'll be damned if that's not the truth. Chelsea, what you got?
So this is just a little off topic, but I had, just a curiosity because I have the book right here with me, and I'm remembering that I was questioning this earlier. But just, do you know anything about, I haven't looked to see if they have any more information, but about underneath each gene key in the book, there's a note about the physiology. Like, I'm looking at the 7th gene key right now. It's the diaphragm. And then there's amino acid, valine. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. So I don't know so much about the physiology side of it, although my hunch would be that it is tied to that amino acid. So that amino acid is probably regulated by or has something to do with that particular part of your physiology. But the amino acids, interestingly, the video that I just recorded today, I go into the codon rings and I go into sort of how those things come about. So I'll briefly touch on it here, and then I go a little bit more in depth in this actual video. But basically, the gene keys are called the gene keys because they overlay with our DNA. And what that means from a scientific standpoint is we have what are called codons in our DNA. And there are 64 codons. And each codon is a triplet. So there are what are called base pairs, A, T, C, and G. And basically, one codon is 3 letters of your DNA. So like A, T, G is one codon, A, T is another codon, etc. So there's 64 of those codons. And then when you take those codons, you can combine them in our human body in 20 different ways. And each of those different combinations produces a different amino acid. So there are 20 amino acids that are in our body. And so when you take those 2 codons and you combine them, or 4 like some of them are only 2, some of them are only 1 to make that specific amino acid. Some of them are 6 that you need to make that specific amino acid. But that is then how we come up with the codon rings in the gene keys. So there's 20, technically there's 22 codon rings, but let me tell you why that is. So there's 20 amino acids, 22 codon rings. The 21st codon ring is what's called the ring of trials, which is actually the 3 what are called stop codons that are in our DNA. So in our DNA, when our system is reading the code and deciding, the amino acids basically just tell our body what to produce, what to make, like what chemicals are they making, or like what substance needs to be made. Maybe it's a component of a muscle or a nerve cell or a hormone or whatever. And so when you see the code, for example, I'll just use ATGAC, your body at that point, if that were, and I don't think it is, but if that were an amino acid, it wouldn't know that's the end of the code. There needs to be another 3 letters that tell us, okay, stop reading the code right there and go and make this thing. And so that's the 21st is the stop codons that get our body to stop. And what I talk about in this video is that the stop codons are our opportunity to pause and look around and choose. Because remember, as above, so below. It's all hologenetic. And then the 22nd codon ring in the gene keys is actually called the ring of secrets. And I don't know a ton about it. I know that it's related to, it's a ring within a ring. So within that ring of trials is the ring of secrets. And it pertains specifically to the 12th gene key. But I'm not very well versed in what that is or means. But that is how they are overlaid and connected.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I'll have to check out your video on that too. Yeah, I'm curious because I know you've been talking a little bit about like getting more into looking at how these like diseases or like symptoms and that show up in our body are manifesting because of some deeper spiritual, mental thing that we have going on. And that's why I was curious when I saw the bit about the physiology. Yeah, because I think if I remember correctly, gene key 30, which we've been talking about for me, let me see. Oh yeah, so physiology under that says solar plexus and digestion, and I've had chronic digestive issues. Definitely a correlation there. Yeah, would definitely like to hear more about what you have to say about that as time goes on. I know you're like still thinking about like how that's gonna show up in your work, but
yeah, it's definitely something I'm very interested in, and I'm not sure. It definitely for me seems like a truth. It just seems like there's too much evidence to the fact that there's some sort of spiritual component involved with chronic illness. Like it just makes a lot of sense. Whether or not I'll be able to tie that to specific gene keys, I think that there is a possibility for that to be done. I would argue that even Richard right now has come on and on various podcasts talked about how he doesn't even fully understand the codon rings and how they tie together. And so he was on with, do you know who Zach Bush is by any chance? So Zach Bush is is classically trained physician and is split off from that world and takes a more spiritual approach to things now. But it's my understanding that Richard and Zach are currently mushing their heads together to try and figure out more with the codon rings and how this kind of all maps out and makes sense.
Yeah, as a kinesiologist, this whole codon ring thing took me, that was one of my main focuses from the very get-go. And it was so funny because I went in, and as I was listening to, because it's on the website, and listening to Richard Rudd talk about it, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching him, I'm like, oh, he doesn't know yet. He doesn't know yet. And then he says, I don't know yet, because I could see, I was like, oh, but he has this, if you just want to check it out, because I think it's so cool. I took the black out, but these are the codon rings. And he's got a little, it's so cool. And you can start to look at your rings and then see how it connects with other people. Like one of my closest friends, her and I were together trying to start that wellness center that I was telling you about earlier. And her and I both share that Illuminati codon ring. We both have it in our own personal charts. And when you put the two of us together, it's crazy. It's crazy how we just go on fire. We just pull people in from that connection. So I think that is what this codon ring is all about. What these rings are all about is the way that we're going to be able to connect, and we bring all of those pieces together. If you and I share something that links, that will help us to go through that link. And I think that's why it's so important what Jay's offering for us to all come together like this, because I think we're going to see that start to unwind and unravel how these codon rings affect us all. It's freaking amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, super fascinating. I'm excited to learn more about that.
And what a masterclass in trust from Richard, who, like, if you don't know the story, he basically just had like a 3-day spiritual awakening, and like all of this was like blasted into his brain out of nowhere. And he had this experience of like basically being able to ask any question of the universe and essentially get the answer. And he saw the gene keys and how to lay it out and what it all meant all over that 3 days. And then he had to take the next 7 years to write it all down and get it all out of him. But what an amazing lesson in, he doesn't even fully comprehend what he got, but he still shared it with the world because he knew it would be valuable. So there are still parts of this that are not developed. This is what I got in those 3 days, and we'll figure out where it goes from there.
Talk about commitment, like developing something for over 7 years plus. And I wonder if he has, I haven't ever looked at his profile, but be curious to see if he has the 29th gene key in his profile.
I think he does have it somewhere. I know that I'm actually positive he has it somewhere. I can't remember where it is though.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So thank you for being here. I want to tell you before you guys dip out, the next one is going to be on the 15th. So that is in, I think, 9 days from now, also going to be at noon Eastern time. And then I'm going to keep them on Thursdays at noon for the next little bit. So every Thursday at noon. And then we'll see what happens from there. I'm keeping an eye on who's showing up and how the calls are going. And if we need to go back, if it's just too much to sit here for 2 or 3 hours every time, and we need to go back to bi-weekly, and that makes more sense with people, that's fine too. But we're going to try weekly for a little bit. We'll see how that goes. This will be posted to the channel in a couple of days. Keep your eyes peeled for the other video that hopefully will go up today. I got to get it edited, so that takes a few hours, and then got to get it uploaded. So just a heads up there. But on the pathway of realization, where I talk about this idea of the codon rings and kind of spell that out a little bit more also. And then lastly is I had 2 people that have decided to get going with me on the one-on-one working side. And like I said last time, I'm looking for 10, depending on the needs and like what people are looking for. So if that speaks to you in any way, shape, or form, respond to the email that I sent out, and we'll chat about that from there. But I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for being here, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next.
Bye bye.